the Medical AI Podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Felix Beecher, and this is the Medical AI Podcast, a 30-minute thrill ride of big ideas. We talk to a range of top guests, from industry innovators to scientists to philosophers. This is brought to you by Informatech, where I'm the head of healthcare technology. One of the remarkable things about machine learning is the flexibility with which it can be applied. To a large degree, an image is an image, whether it is of a cat, a road, a breast tumour, or a lesion on the retina. This points to the potential viability of general medical AI developers rather than specialists. Now, previously I've talked primarily only to specialists, and this is the first time that I've interviewed a medical AI generalist, and this is RJ Kedziora, co-founder of Estenda Solutions. RJ, a very, very warm welcome to you. Could you please introduce yourself and explain a little bit about your company and yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me today.
Pleasure.
Pleasure speaking with you. My name is RJ Kedziora. I'm one of the co-founders of Estenda Solutions, and we're a custom software data analytics consulting company focused on digital health solutions and specifically in the areas of AI.
So could you talk a little bit on this concept of being able to function as a medical AI generalist?
Absolutely. The key aspect to AI systems and developing them, training them, is data. You need data, whether it's blood glucose information, blood pressure information, or images. In the case of looking at diabetic retinopathy, you need that data and to understand what you're looking at as you develop those AI systems. And then once we've trained them, we can implement them into an overall cloud-based solution that's presented to either patients or providers in a healthcare setting.
Okay, so could you give some examples of the kinds of functions that Estenda perform for its clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it starts with collecting the data. So, we work with a number of Fortune 50 companies, some startups, and then other government organizations, specifically the Indian Health Services. And in those, the customers will come up and have an idea, and that can either be commercially focused or research focused. We work with a number of academic medical health organizations, such as the Joslin Diabetes Center, and we're with PhDs developing new systems, new ways of looking at that data. So we'll first help acquire the data, manage that data, and then actually, in the case of diabetic retinopathy, where you're looking at these images, you need to mark them up. You need to understand what is within that image. So we'll develop the systems to help the researchers analyze those images that are then fed into the AI systems. And once the AI is trained, how do you implement that into a clinical setting? So on the back end of it, from the custom software perspective, we'll develop the solutions that integrate in with the EHRs to get more clinical relevant information to apply to that AI decision making.
Okay, so let's take the example of diabetic retinopathy, because I know that that's one of the primary things you've been involved in. So in concrete terms, what if a company called you in and said, look, we want to develop an AI system to diagnose diabetic retinopathy. We haven't collected any data. We don't have much of a clue about how we're going to do it. We just have some funding, right? So what from that point until actually commercializing a product, what are the stages where you would be involved?
Right. In the case of diabetic retinopathy, and just for the listener, diabetic retinopathy is a complication that affects your eye. Specifically, it damages the blood vessels of the light sensitive tissues of the back of your eye, of your retina. And it's the leading cause of preventable blindness today. So if we can find it, it can be treated with a number of different methods. And if we look back into 2018, the FDA did approve some early AI-based systems that did what we call refer, no referral type of analysis of images. But they were tied to specific cameras, which worked very well but had the limited field of view. And some of the current research as we move forward here are using different types of cameras that have a wider field of view, so you see more of the retina. And as we work with our partners, whether they're research oriented or commercial oriented, there are repositories of images of the retina out there that are available for research or commercial use. So we help acquire those images and then develop a system such that experts can look at those images and mark them up such that when you are training the AI system, they can see and understand where the different occlusions are in the eye. They have to know what they're actually looking for as we train those systems. And as you're labeling these images, the different things that the human expert sees, such that the AI can learn from it, different experts will have different opinions on degrees of severity. So then you get into situations where between a number of experts, you want to develop a consensus as to what the right answer is. In terms of diabetic retinopathy, there's various levels: mild, moderate, severe. So if you're looking at a particular image, are we seeing a mild incidence or severe? And so we're developing systems that present those eye images to the experts where they can analyze and assess it. And then where there are differences between opinions, you can then present that and let people adjudicate and decide what is the right answer, which then feeds into the AI system. For people that have data available, we can help create governance solutions and the electronic systems to allow others to be able to use their data. So if you do have a collection of retina images or blood glucose information, and you want to make it available to other researchers, we can help develop those systems and make it available.
I see. Okay, so you're very heavily involved in the development of these systems. Are you, and also the making sure that they fit together with other kind of IT systems in healthcare. Are you involved in commercialization of these products as well?
We are more focused on the research, the innovative side of things. We leave the commercialization typically to other interested parties.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. All right. Well, look, let's talk a little bit about the population that you're developing these systems for. Now, you mentioned that these are Indians, by which you mean American Indians, right? Just in case there's anyone listening in Bombay or Delhi.
Yes. The Native American population here in the United States.
So is there a connection between the Native American population and diabetic retinopathy?
Unfortunately, the history of the Native American population is being hit harder by diabetes than the general population. So Estenda has been part of what's called the Jalzen Vision Network for 20 years now, which is a teleophthalmology system for finding incidences of retinopathy. Because if you can find it, then it can be treated. And when you look at these AI systems, they're very dependent on the training data set that is applied. So, if you happen to use it, train an AI system on white males from 50 to 60, you're going to get differences when that AI is then used with females of 20 to 30 and different ethnic backgrounds. So over the years, as part of the JVN program, we've been able to collect literally millions of photos of eyes. And with the appropriate permissions from the Indian Health Services, which is the U.S. government organization responsible for the healthcare of the Native American population, we can work with partners and researchers to develop these solutions using the images of the population that we're trying to treat.
Sure. Okay, so you said that your systems will be able to grade retinopathy in terms of mild, medium, or severe. Why is that an important piece of information to have on a patient?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a number of FDA-approved AI systems that look today at what we think of as refer or no refer. There is some incidence of disease or there's not. And that relates to whether or not you need to refer that individual, the patient, to a specialist. And we don't see historically a lot of compliance with that, because in those early stages, you might not be seeing any impact from the very early stages of diabetic retinopathy. So in terms of what we're looking to do is, one, use what are called ultra wide cameras. So look at a greater percentage of the eyeball to have of the retina, to have a better understanding and be able to predict the progression of the disease. So then as we talk and interact with those patients, the healthcare providers specifically talk to those patients, then we can impress upon them the greater risk of this disease and find more incidences to be able to treat them.
So could you just explain a little bit the level of the retinal tissue? What's going on with this kind of retinopathy? How and why is the retina degrading?
Mm-hmm. This is where I get into the idea that I am a generalist. I often say I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. But the general idea is that as your disease state of diabetes is affecting the microvascular, of the eye, the retina of the eye, you're going to gradually go blind. You'll start seeing floaters and occlusions in your eye. And that's what we're trying to prevent, in going blind.
Now, from a perspective of complete naivety, it would seem surprising to me if Native Americans have different retinas to Caucasian people or American people, African American people or white American people or any other kind of race. Are there differences in the retina between the different races?
That's one of the things we're looking at to see if there is bias, because we're all human, but there are minute differences. And when you're applying AI to these types of medical diagnostic problems, it can really pick up on fine-grained, minute differences, and analyze that over time. So that is part of what we were looking at. Is there a bias in current models to be able to address that?
Okay. Now, so we talked about grading the severity of retinopathy, but I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe other types of information or decisions could come out of your systems too, right? For example, whether to treat or not, and maybe what type of treatment should be given, and maybe even if there are subtypes of the disease. Can you expand on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. If diabetic retinopathy is detected, there is a fairly standard course of treatment over time that gets can be applied. It's very well known. It's a very treatable condition when it's identified. And the goal is to identify more cases as early as possible to be able to treat them and reduce that incidence of blindness. It starts with, mild is sort of that first level, and you may not even be aware of it, or just dismiss what you might be seeing or not seeing with your vision. I know, I just turned 50 and started wearing glasses, but I held off on that for the longest point in time. So it's very easy to ignore those, mild things that you might have going on with your health condition. So if we can detect those early and treat them, the better off you're going to be, the better your quality of life will be.
Well, congratulations, by the way. And you should probably stop staring at screens so much, right?
Yes.
All right. So let's move away from diabetic retinopathy, which is very interesting. We could talk about all day, I'm sure. What are the other kind of disease areas have you worked in?
Mm-hmm. We got our start focused on diabetes in general, with a diabetes disease management solution for military healthcare, and that then moved into other chronic conditions, heart failure, high blood pressure, and then we discovered, just as we were progressing through the years, we've been around for 20 years now, everything revolves around the idea of data. So we've gotten heavily involved with medical device manufacturers, diabetes, sleep, and also looking at obesity. Because as you can derive information, whether just with I'll call it an old school algorithm that's not using AI, or now apply AI to these specific challenges, it has great benefits.
So, and this comes back to the initial point about the flexibility of machine learning, right? And what kind of general rules do you follow, irrespective of what particular disease area you're working in? What kind of general rules do you follow for developing medical AI systems?
Mm-hmm. One of the challenges we see in the industry now is acquiring data, particularly clinical data. There are methods and improving methods of getting data out of clinical systems, EHRs. Particularly, it's called FHIR-based prototypes and API-based protocol. But once you've seen one implementation, you've seen one implementation. They are inherently designed for flexibility. So as you move from institution to institution, the data is going to have differences. The lab values can be coded differently. So that's a core feature of what we have to do as we help these companies develop the AI systems with the data. We're acquiring data from different sources, and then you have to bring it together and create a common nomenclature for that data. We very much rely on industry standards for doing that, but there are differences between institutions of how they choose to code that information within the systems or share it out to the rest of the world.
Now, you kind of hinted at something which I think is really interesting as well there, and that is that you could potentially, I would assume, throw additional types of data into your AI systems to give you greater, diagnostic capability as well. I mean, I just completely off the top of my head, I can imagine that blood pressure and insulin resistance, those kind of things might also be helpful for diagnosing diabetic retinopathy. Is that am I in the right lines there?
Absolutely. And if we just generally talk about diabetes, your individual condition has a lot of variation of how your body reacts to the foods you eat, to the medications you're taking, to the insulin that you might be taking right before a meal. So, there was a study years ago done in Israel that just really demonstrated the impact of, how different individuals could all eat a banana or a blueberry and have completely different biological reactions from eating that same food source. So if you look, as a doctor talking to a patient, trying to absorb all of that information to be able to help that patient know what to do for their personal condition is really difficult. But that's what AIs are designed to do. They
Yeah.
can ingest large volumes of data from different sources, make sense of that to be able to then help that individual, better understand, how they might react to eating a certain food, or if they're going to go for a jog, that afternoon, or a bike ride, how much insulin should they take before they eat, and how will that be impacted by their exercise?
Okay, RJ, why don't we talk about the market in which you operate? How competitive is this field, do you think?
It is very competitive. As a generalist in AI and not
Mm-hmm.
being that specialist, there are any number of custom software data analysis organizations that are out there. And then if you further funnel it down to just the ones that focus on digital healthcare, there are less of those, but it does allow us to specialize and bring additional value to the table. One of the things we do with our teams, developers, quality assurance, product program managers, we particularly train them in the disease condition that they're going to work on to be able to better empathize with the end user, and really understand what they're going through. So if you're working on a system in AI, diabetic retinopathy, sleep, um, depression, one of those areas, it's the wonders of the internet make so much information available from
Mm-hmm.
high quality resources. Stanford, Harvard, all these institutions, MIT have put out this information to be able to train and better understand the conditions. So that's a core thing of what we do with our development teams to differentiate us. And also, we've focused around the core idea of helping others. It's inherent in the fact that we work in healthcare. Everything we do has an impact on the health and well-being of individuals. And, I've worked on accounting systems in past years before I co-founded Estenda, railroad car scheduling systems, and those are very important things. But when you go to sleep at night and you can say you've made an impact in like the health and wellness of another person, it feels good.
And what kind of challenges in general would you say that you are most significant that you face in developing your systems?
Time is always a challenge. There's never enough time to develop a solution that you truly want to develop. In software development, it's interesting. The construction industry has been around for probably millions of years now, kind of thing, and they have a high rate of not meeting their projections, their budgets, and software development, and now even AI. That is a particular challenge. We might all think, okay, this project is going to take 3 months. This project is going to take 4 months. But until you really get into it and start experimenting and learn what you're not sure of just yet, those timelines are going to change, which always makes it interesting. So when we manage projects and budgets, it's very much okay. It's particularly in the research world where things are grant based and you do have a
Mm-hmm.
fixed source of funding. You can't just keep going. It's like, okay, we projected 6 months. You can't go 9 months, 12 months because the money's just not available. So it's often how do we balance the features and functionality and what we're going to achieve in this phase of a project, to get something that provides value.
Okay, now you deal with or you work for a wide range of different types of clients. Now, did you say that you have done work for Google, for example?
We work with Google
Okay, I
on some
mean,
of these projects,
now I guess
particularly some of
yeah.
the diabetic retinopathy project. We use the Google Auto ML capabilities.
Now that's great for you because obviously they're about as big a fish as swim in the pool of AI, right? And in fact, I can remember hearing some amazing statistic about the percentage of machine learning specialists work for Google, and it was kind of like a staggering percentage, which leads me to my question, which is, I would have thought that Google have like more machine learning specialists that they can shake a stick at, and so how do you carve out a niche and make yourself relevant to a client like Google?
Part of it is that we have the data that's available. So partnerships with various different institutions, we have access to the data and the images that Google needs to be able to do some of that work. And when you think of Google as those specialists, they're creating the AI systems that are then being used by other organizations to train their algorithms. So they have something called auto ML for auto machine learning. AWS has their solutions. The Microsoft Azure has their solutions that are now available. That's what those specialists are particularly focused on, developing those solutions that other people are using. So think of just an accounting system. There are people that are generating the accounting software, and then there's people that are using the accounting software to do your accounting. And that's where the Googles of the world come into play. They're creating those frameworks to enable AI, OpenAI now with ChatGPT. They're enabling the use of these types of systems.
Okay, now you have been in business for 20 years, which in AI years is like millennia. So, um, I mean, you've obviously been heavily involved in AI all that time. You've seen an awful lot of change. I mean, what's your perspective on the last 20 years, and how do you see the next 20 years, if that's not a ridiculous question?
Yeah, it's my journey with AI even goes back into high school. When I was looking at college and university, I very much was like, I'm going to go get a PhD in artificial intelligence. I was reading, Isaac Asimov and all those, great science fiction authors of the day, and that was really where I thought I was going. And then I was offered a full-time paying job as opposed to going the PhD route, and chose that. But I have found AI over the years in its numerous iterations. One of my senior thesis projects was looking at genetic algorithms, how to use the idea of genetic algorithms and evolution to solve problems. Through the 90s, it got into expert systems, where you were really trying to manually code all of the rules. Talking to experts. Okay, what are all of the decision points that you can make around this particular problem, and coding them into an expert rule system. And then in more generically into computer algorithms, and now into these learning systems that are available. But the key to every stage of this has always been data. That's what's behind all of these systems, is that you have this data. And now, you talk about the next, 10, 15, 20 years, everybody has jumped on the generative AI, the ChatGPT bandwagon. And it has been interesting. I jumped on it like everybody else at the beginning of this year. The cracks are starting to show. It's not as great as people think. Back in January, February, when it was first became available, it continues to hallucinate or make up things, which is interesting. But for me, it's not where it's today. It's look at what it can do today and where it's going to go in those next 10, 15, 20 years. All of these solutions now, even that we're working with in the diabetic retinopathy world, they're very much tied to a specific camera, a specific way of taking a photo of the eye, or specific data sets, or looking for diabetic retinopathy. But it's not necessarily looking for glaucoma or cataracts.
Mm-hmm.
So as we move forward, I look to the idea that these systems are going to become, just like Estenda is today, more generalized. You'll be able to apply the same types of solutions to a broader set of questions.
Yeah.
You look at ChatGPT and generative AI, and I've seen some recent analysis where its ability to do math has degraded. Well,
Really, I didn't know that.
that's not what it's designed for, and it's not doing the math. It's really predicting what's the next best word, best sentence, best paragraph to answer the problem. So I'm not too surprised. Math isn't its greatest thing, but that's going to change as we move forward.
Good. All right. Well, look, RJ, last question, and that is, what is your favorite current example of medical AI which has got nothing to do with your own?
Nothing to do with my own. Wow, that's a tough question. I'll cheat a little on that question. The idea of AI-driven insulin dosing algorithms, and we're not particularly involved in any of those. But just the idea that a computer can effectively help you better treat your diabetes without you doing anything as that individual. Now very much people are measuring their blood glucose with finger sticks or continuous glucose meters, where you're getting a reading every 5 minutes, every minute, so you have a better understanding of what you need to do. But then as you treat yourself with insulin, if that can happen behind the scenes, driven by an AI algorithm, then the fact that you have diabetes, hopefully, it fades into the background. And
so a kind of real-time feedback kind of system.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very interesting. All right. Well, look, RJ, it's been fascinating to talk to you, and I'm very grateful for you for spending the time. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. All right. Bye-bye then. Thank you for listening. I'm Felix Beecher. Ping me on LinkedIn for more information on Omdia's services in healthcare technology. See you next time.